Good morning. My name is Craig Kinley. I'm the program coordinator for the Stride Art program at Clemson University. We have John Ballato here with us this morning, and we're interviewing John for some faculty success stories in research translation.
Thank you, Craig. I'm John Ballato. I'm a professor of materials science and engineering at Clemson University. I also hold the J.E. Serene Endowed Chair of Optical Fiber. In addition to managing my own research group, teaching my classes, things along those lines, I've had the privilege over the almost nearly 30 years now in the academy to do a lot of things. That includes founding and directing a major interdisciplinary research center. I served as VP for research and then separately VP for economic development at Clemson. I've founded and partially exited a number of companies. I've been an elected board member for a publicly traded electronics company. I chair and have reviewed faculty promotion and tenure dossiers all over the world. So for the purposes, I guess, of our conversation today about research translations and innovations, I've looked at this and I've thought about this conversation from a wide variety of angles, and then hopefully you'll see pieces of that come through today. The purpose of the research that our group conducts is to explore, to understand, and then to apply the interaction of light with materials. Many people don't realize how enabling light is, in the form of lasers also, in daily life. Everything from the backbone of the internet to all sorts of manufacturing related technologies. That light, in the form of a laser or not, and its use in modern life requires that the light has to be made. It has to be oftentimes encoded with information. It has to be transmitted either a short distance or all around the world. And then it has to be used in some way. So our piece of all of those things is, how is it that the materials, right, the periodic table that nature gives us, how is it that light and those materials or combinations of materials, how do they interact? And how do they interact in a way that we can find use for? And when we talk about use, that use means in a way that has some societal benefit. It doesn't have to be right now, but as we're thinking about this, formulating, and then going into the lab to play with, that at some point in the future, there is an opportunity for some greater good to be gained from that interaction of light in the material. And when we say material, again, our group, a little bit more specifically, focuses on materials that are in the form of an optical fiber. And an optical fiber is a strand of glass, usually glass, that is the size of your hair, right? So at a global level, light and materials, at a slightly more nuanced level, those materials in the form of a fiber that are being used in some societally useful and impactful way. It's a great question because research translation, that those two words, they mean different things to virtually every different person. So it's important for us to kind of frame it up here in general than what I tend to think about it, right? So everybody has a different definition. That means it's important to have in your mind what you mean when you have these conversations. So to me, at its core, research translation involves putting the outcomes of research into practice, right? That's it. Right? Putting research outcomes into practice. That's the most, to me, fundamental definition. Now, that has a very wide variety of methodologies, right? It can range from teaching a class, right? You're taking the information that is informed by the research that you do, your research findings, and you're conveying that out to students, right? That's translational. It could be publishing a paper or conveying that information at a conference, right? That is also, you're translating knowledge that you created or that you have out to an audience that does not, right? In the classroom, through publication. at a conference, right? Those are all means of translation. It could be working with a company to implement improvements to their processes or their products. It could be working with companies to hire your students, right? Because there really is, there are few, I don't know of any, quite honestly, better methods of translating knowledge than through the students into whom we disseminate, the findings of our research, right? It is always about people, right? So students are a huge part of research translation. It could be starting a company, right? Entrepreneurial activities. Those are certainly translational. So all of these are approaches or ways of thinking about research translation. Our job, faculty, professors, our job is to create knowledge and then translate or disseminate that knowledge for some societal good, whether that's large or small, near term or long term. And as I kind of noted, never forget, or we should never forget, that the best and most common means of research translation are through the students that we educate and entrust with that knowledge. All of this being said, for me personally, I tend to gravitate towards research and innovation translations that involve commercialization. At the most fundamental level, somebody's got to pay for it. It may sound somewhat crass or crude, but again, somebody's got to pay for it. So a research strategy or a strategic direction for research and translation has to, in some ways, be targeted towards not just an outcome, but a funding source, right? Parents and students pay us to teach students in the classroom, but they don't generally pay us to do research in the laboratory. We have to find money for that through other means, through writing proposals to federal agencies or companies or foundations or whomever it is. Somebody has to be willing to fund it, has to fit with our expertise, has to be interesting, intellectually interesting, and it has to be useful. There has to be some point in the future. Again, not necessarily immediate, because not everything is immediate. If you're an app developer, that may be more immediate. If you're doing hardware, that may be more immediate. If you're in the physical sciences, right, immediate is probably 10 years if you're lucky, right? But anyway, it has to be useful or potentially useful. And it obviously has to be a sufficient scope and scale to be doable, right? So there are both kind of philosophical, strategic decision points and practical ones, right? Somebody has to pay for it. It has to be doable. The part about fitting with your expertise, that's worth a little bit slightly deeper dive. Expertise evolves over time, right? I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm globally known in my field, and I am still learning. And for every one step forward, I take 2 steps back, right? So that strategy has to be one that you're always thinking about, and you're always fine-tuning, and you're always evolving. Those significant milestones, I would go back to something I kind of mentioned before, that is kind of fundamentally translation of the innovations and the research outcomes is primarily done through the people, through the students that we educate along the way. So I would say definitively, there's really no kind of question or debate here. I am most proud of the students, the students that have come out of our group and graduated. Many of whom are now, because again, we've been doing this for a long time, many of whom are now CEOs. They're senior VPs at Fortune 500 companies. They're managers, they're staff scientists. I stay in touch with almost all of them on a near weekly basis, because that kind of family that you build over time, again, they are your primary sources of translation. And like anything else, right, you thrive through their thriving, right? And the enthusiasm that gets you up every morning to get you into the laboratory, knowing that your research is going to fail more often than it's going to succeed, the thing that one of the things certainly that keeps you going are the successes of your students and your graduates, right? So I would say unquestionably the most significant milestone and point of pride is, the students of the last 30 years. I am also proud of the work that we've done with industry, big and small industries, again, short term, near term, that have led to various translational impacts. That's everything from licensed patents to consulting, serving on their boards and helping to guide the research and the work that they're doing. In the laboratory, at Clemson, in the laboratory, a lot of the innovations that we've done in fiber, especially these days, in optical fiber, are used commercially. There are entire fields, subfields of optics and fiber optics that exist because of the research that we've done. A lot of firsts, never done before, state-of-the-art activities that have originated in our lab. Those are obviously points of pride as well. And I guess the other piece of this, depending upon, again, how broadly you share these interviews, is the fact that, again, our students are CEOs and senior VPs, that our innovations are, again, world first. Many of them are world first. Probably we have one of those every quarter that I can identify going back 30 years, is testament to the fact that a school like Clemson, right, can do these things, right? Many of the things that Clemson talks about doing, we have been doing for nearly 30 years now. So it's not just possible, it's expected and capable of being done. I said I stay in touch with my students, past and present, on a weekly basis during the school year. This is a topic that I write a weekly kind of musing to them. And this is a topic that comes up regularly as I continue to kind of evolve my own thinking and kind of want to share this with them so that they can then share it out through their own kind of thinking and impacts. But again, there's a lot there. Firstly, it's critical to acknowledge that any truly novel research, right, is going to be hard, right? All the easy stuff's been done. And by definition, doing novel research is doing something that's never been done before. To even kind of think about going out on that dance floor demands humility, it demands resilience, and it demands an expectation on a daily basis that you're going to fail way more often than you'll succeed. You have to have a fundamental philosophy. Like, what is it that we are doing and why? Right? This interaction of light and matter in the form of a fiber. Why is that interesting? Why is that useful? Where do we fit in? Where is our group carved down a niche that nobody else in the world does, or where we can outcompete, little old Clemson? Where do people in the world, what is it that we can do and do where people all over the world will come to little old Clemson for, because we can do it better than anybody else? You gotta love what you do. My average workday is 10 to 12 hours. And it feels like 4 to 5 because I love what I do. It took me 25 years to realize, and it took some very important mentors, right, who knew me better than I knew me, to make me understand that I thought I was cut out to do these things, but I wasn't. I was made. I was born to do what it is that I do today. And you have to surround yourself with better people, right? Who have a shared passion for the work, and they have a shared sense of urgency and purpose. But most importantly, passion, urgency, purpose. More important than that is that they can have fun and they can laugh and shrug off all of those inevitable failures. Okay. But the other way of kind of flipping that around is there is no such thing as a failure, as long as you learn something from it, right? Again, in research, we have a hypothesis. We go in the lab, we construct these experiments to test a hypothesis. And that hypothesis is our chipping away again at those things that Mother Nature has kept hidden, right? We think she works this way, but we don't know. So we're going to come up with an idea and then test that idea. And again, a verifiable, reproducible way. Again, more often than not, you're wrong, right? So it's only, you only take it as a failure if you don't learn something from it. And okay, well, that hypothesis was wrong. Shrug it off. Now what's our new, what did we learn from it? What is our new hypothesis? How are we going to test that? And you keep, as I said, there's one step forward for every two steps back. But again, that requires that resilience, that passion, that humility. Have to be humble about failure. But again, surrounding yourself with people that kind of share those attributes is the only way that you can do this day in and day out.
Thanks, John, for that response. There's some really great correlation between research translation and entrepreneurship in the field that I'm in. I'm a non-academic, and you hit kind of a point that resilience to failure. And I always tell my mentees, your tolerance for failure should always exceed the desire to give up.
Advice for researchers looking to translate. Okay. I would say there are 3 or 4 main points here, at least in what my way of thinking. Again, research translation or innovation and translation of innovations, it's critical to recognize that every person you speak to about that will have in their head a different definition. So you either have to kind of talk to them first to understand their definition, or you certainly in your own mind have to have a clear definition for what translation means to you. Okay. And again, that could be, I want to start companies. I'm a serial entrepreneur and that's what I'm going to do. Or I'm going to, I am best at translating knowledge to students by writing on a whiteboard or a blackboard in a classroom, right? Everybody has a different means of translating. So what does that mean to you? What is the methodology or modality that you are best at delivering that translation? Because that is also different for everybody. And then focus on those things, because the things you're best at are the things you're going to be most interested in, passionate about, willing to get up every morning and go do, right? So have a clear definition and understand that definition with respect to what makes you tick and what you enjoy to do. Not everybody, kind of along those same lines, not everybody can or should start a company, right? I mean, that's stuff I'm interested in. Craig, I know it's stuff you're certainly interested in. So for some subset of us, that's a piece of the response. One's best approach, right, in translating research into practical applications is almost always to pump out the best kind of students, right, who are aggressively sought by industry. So whatever means by which you can do that in a classroom, in a research lab, through a company, whatever, patents, papers, you name it. Think about that for yourself and what that is for you. And then remember, you got to revisit and refine those over time because we're always learning. And our interests change. Everybody's interests change over time, not just because of the work that you've done. We've done research that was very impactful in certain fields, and then the industry changed, or a new technology came along, and as they always do, right? There's this repetitive cycle of creative destruction. So you can, the work we were doing in the earliest parts of my career, some of those things are translated. Some of those things are still in use today, 30 years later, and some aren't. And, you just have to kind of say, well, okay, times change, interests change, new technologies come along. What are we doing today? And that's why it's important to have these kind of underlying basic philosophies for what it is that you do and what is your niche in all this. But again, you have to keep up with what the industry, right, which includes kind of the students and where they're going. What is that today? Where is that going? Right. And then make sure your research and your innovations are kind of tracking with that. And that requires you to revisit and to refine that over time. Words of wisdom. There may be a few things. I alluded to this before, and I think I said that I have been truly blessed with several remarkable mentors, both personal and professional mentors. And in most cases, they were unofficial. It wasn't that I said, like, you're Ballato's mentor, right? That's almost never the way it works out. These are usually people that come in and come out and whatever, just through whatever the means may be, and you learn from them and you resonate, and there's something. So again, I have been blessed. I continue to be blessed with mentors, including you, Craig, in some ways. They've helped me craft my thinking on kind of all of these topics. But mentors are critical to this. Don't wait to be assigned a mentor, right? Seek them out, find them. They don't have to be, it could be unofficial, it could be informal. And hey, let's go get coffee, got some questions. Whatever. Just get into a habit of finding those people. I also think it's important to reiterate that meaningful research, right? Research that has the potential at some point in the future to have some community or societal good or benefit, right? Meaningful research is hard. So coming up with fundable ideas, getting them supported, mentoring the students to become independent, critical thinkers, getting the information, the knowledge created, getting that out there, being visible, right? I mean, I can sit at my desk all day long and type and muse about stuff, but if I'm not out, if I'm not on airplanes, if I'm not visiting companies, if I'm not at conferences, then people may see my name on a paper, but they don't know me. They don't interact with me. So being visible is just as critical in all this. So and each piece of that is a full-time job. I could spend my entire life on an airplane and still not meet all the people I would like to meet, or get all the funding to support all the ideas that we have, to get jobs, to queue up jobs for our students. Each piece of that, full-time job. And faculty are asked to do it every day, to do all of those things every day. So you got to give yourself some grace. You have to find mentors, and you have to listen more than you speak. Okay? And I think the last part of that is, and I do try to remind my students often of these things. Failure isn't an option, it's an expectation. But you have to go into that. And we talked about this balance, right, between humility and determination, right? And one thing I kind of always end my musings to my past and present students with is dare greatly with compulsive curiosity and moxie. And fundamentally enjoy what you do, surround yourself by people who share that, and the rest of these things will come if you let them.